By Thursday, the 6th day of November 2025, midnight, campaign is expected to end officially ahead of the November 8th, 2025 Anambra State gubernatorial election. Now, very interesting, but not really interesting enough. I will say why it is not interesting enough towards the end. Now, Anambra State election, 2025 gubernatorial election had been scheduled to hold on the 8th of November 2025. That's a few days' time. Now, on Monday, the 3rd of November 2025, the National Peace Committee organized conventionally what they do ahead of every election, presidential, gubernatorial, which is the signing of the peace pact. And most of the candidates were on ground to sign. Now, these are the informations about this election. INEC have told us that the election will hold in 5,718 polling units out of the 5,720 polling units. In other words, election will not hold in only 2 polling units. Details were not really given why. Now, Anambra State has 326 political ward and 21 local government areas. So this election will hold across this polling unit, ward, and indeed these LGAs. Now, there are 16 candidates contesting the election. It is, however, important to state that only one candidate is actually a strong candidate in this election. The major political parties, namely the PDP, the LP, the APC, you can even add the ADC more recently. They all have candidates in the election, but their candidates are weak, very, very weak. And that is a factor in this election. Because there are weak candidates, it more or less looks like the candidate of APOGA, or Progressive Grand Alliance, and the current governor of the state, Professor Charles Soludo, is contesting the election alone. You can say he's contesting the election unopposed. Now, there are a lot of things that really made other candidates more weak or weaker. The issue of zoning, and zoning plays a big role in elections in Nigeria these days because of zoning. Now, for example, Soludo comes from Anambra South Senatorial District. So the general feeling is that he has done 4 years of Anambra South, and then he should be allowed to complete their 8 years, so that in the next 4 years, that is by 2029, when Anambra is supposed to have another election, the government or the gubernatorial seat will go to Anambra Central Senatorial District. No, that is the issue. That's how it works. Then from the central, when the central must have done their 8 years, it will go to the north. And when the north do their 8 years, it will now return back to the south, where Soludo comes from. So that factor makes other candidates weak. Now, secondly, is that they seems not to apply inspiring to the electorate. There are some electorates who are not happy with the performance of the current governor, because the truth of the matter is that he ran a very big campaign of a big idea in 2021 when he wanted to be governor. So he talk about the Dubai Taiwan. There's nothing on ground to show that Anambra is going to look like Dubai or Taiwan in the next 2 or 3 years. So that big campaign he ran in 2021, the reality is nowhere to be found today. Therefore, some electorate would have had the opportunity to say, okay, Your Excellency, we want to show you the exist. But that is not going to happen. That is not likely going to happen on Saturday, because there seems to be no alternative in this election. Now, let's talk about what are the likely implications for these things we have discussed. Number one implication is that there will likely voter apathy. The election will likely record low voter turnout because we know that the electorates are not gingered, and in a situation where the election is not contentious, it is likely going to be low voter turnout. Then the second thing is that the election will largely be peaceful. Yes, it will be peaceful because if you look at there will no, but the stakes are not high, the tension are not high, so there will likely be no reason for anybody to fight either at any level. The third implication is that the agents of the candidates may also not be motivated. These are the implications I think will happen for this election on Saturday. But let us talk about the overall implication on the state, governance of the state, and democracy and the democratic practices in Nigeria. Are there implications of things like this? There are. Now recall that in the last Imo State election in 2024, something similar to this happened. The candidates were weak. The major political parties, frank candidates that were weak, and Governor Hope Uzodinma ran that election almost as sole candidate. Now, the implication is that when we continue to have this type of election where the incumbents are not put on check, the number one implication is that it will continue to lead to voter apathy. I've mentioned that, but I'm not looking at overall implication. The voters will continue to develop apathy, nonchalance, and they will not vote. Secondly is that it makes nonsense of democracy, because democracy is supposed to be about electing a leader, not correlation. Because as far as I'm concerned, what will happen in Anambra on Saturday is correlation. Soludo will be correlated the governor for the second time. He's not really, contesting to win back his seat because the stakes are low, and he has no connect. So it will introduce correlation rather than election into democracy. And democracy does not envisage correlation of people, it envisages election. And election is driven is a contest and is a competition. That competitiveness will not be there. Then the third point is that the political economy of the state will not boom. What I mean by when the candidates in elections are weak, only one candidate is contesting, what we mean by political economy is that the investors, people who invest in it, either by campaign, either by funding the candidates, they will not really do that, because there's no need wasting your money into an investment that will not yield anything, because we all know that political investment is an investment. Now, that will happen because people will likely not invest in most of the candidates, or people will likely invest on one candidate. And when people don't invest on the candidate will in turn not empower people around them like their agents. So the political economy of the state will be low. Now, for the candidate, for a candidate that is contesting as sole candidate, the implication is that he too will be stingy about dispensing the finances available to him, because there's no need for that, because he really doesn't have an opponent. So as we move forward to election of 2027, and indeed other elections that will come before 2027 and even post 2027 election, I think there is a great need for our political parties to take cognizance of peculiarity of our environment. I believe very strongly that if political parties in Anambra, took cognizance of peculiarity of Anambra, that they wouldn't have brought certain candidates, to contest against Soludo. I don't want to be too emphatic, so I don't sound personal. Now, looking at environment, looking at what the voters think, what their emotion looks like, why bringing up a candidate, I think will help to a large extent to, make the democracy we practice be about contest, be about contestation, and it should also be about contestation of ideas. Thank you.